All right. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having an exciting lockdown time in India, same as we have here in Bahrain. Greeting from Bahrain, and welcome to this webinar on planning and scheduling for effective maintenance. And we hope to be able to have an opportunity to also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation if we have time on our hand. So without further ado, we will start with the process in order to have full advantage of the time that we have available for us. I'm just trying to get this. Oh. Okay. So the title of our presentation is Planning and Scheduling for Effective Maintenance. Now, planning and scheduling is part of a work management process. Work management process for doing maintenance activities. There has to be a process. It cannot be done on an ad hoc basis or at the whim of the maintenance manager. There has to be a process that is well understood by everybody in the organization. In fact, the planning and scheduling is the heart of the work management process. So we need to first talk about a best-in-class work management process for doing maintenance activities that delivers the best results for the organization. And it helps the organization to give the ability to gain control over work. So work has to be done in a proactive manner, not in a reactive manner. So we need to know a process that help us do our work in a proactive manner. So what it is not, this work management process, it is not high-tech and it is not fancy. It needs to be a practical process that is well understood and supported by the people who are actually doing the work, i.e. the planners, the schedulers, technicians, supervisors, production people. So it needs to be universally understood. It is supposed to apply summon order to the process of getting maintenance work accomplished effectively. And that's what we will be talking about, gentlemen. A work management process constitutes of various elements, and these categorized as follows. Work identification. So we have to have a mechanism to identify the work that needs to be done by maintenance. There has to be a mechanism, and we'll be talking briefly about that. Then there has to be a prioritization system. You cannot allow to have a confusion on what is considered to be urgent or what is considered to be emergency or normal. There has to be, again, a system that is clear to everybody. After you identify the work and do the prioritization, then they have to have a system for doing planning prior to scheduling. We will be also talking about the cooperative work scheduling and backlog management. What do we mean about cooperative work scheduling? I will explain that in this webinar. Resource leveling and management of resources, that is people, materials, and financial. Then we talk about work execution, documenting the work after execution, and updating the records in your computerized maintenance management system immediately after completing the execution. Data collection, history review, and failure identification. And last but not least, institute performance measures and follow-up processes. Work management process, the reason why we want to have a process is that because it provides a systematic approach for managing and measuring asset maintenance activities and associated costs. So the objective of a well-balanced work management process is to ensure the following. effective implementation of asset performance strategies. What is the meaning of that? Our assets cost us a lot of money, and we need to have performance strategies to ensure that we get our money's worth and retain on this high capital expenditure. Also, it helps us execute the maintenance activities in accordance to the environment, health, security, and safety standards. We do not want people to get hurt in doing the maintenance activities. We want to make sure that we perform maintenance activities in the most optimum cost. Cost is a very, very important driver for the organization, and we want to make sure that we get benefits for every dollar that we spend. Provide and maintain up-to-date data quality in our CMMS system in order to have better analysis. Then improve maintenance performance, maximize asset availability, implementation of best practices and benchmarking. All of these objectives are part and parcel of having a well-balanced, best-in-class work management process. And it is a structured approach to integrate the process of organizing properly roles and responsibilities. What is the meaning of that? Who is supposed to do what? We cannot leave it again on an ad hoc basis. We have to establish what is called the RASI tables. That is responsibility, accountability, consulting, or informative. Everybody has to know what is his accountability in doing the work. Then we need to be setting directions, objectives, establishing goals and measures, developing plans and schedules, initiating action, formally documenting the results, improving data quality, reviewing performance, identifying barriers, and taking corrective actions. So our work management process needs to be a structured methodology to integrate all of these together. Here is a very basic and elementary but very important work management process. It needs to start by identifying the work. You cannot do something that you cannot identify. So you have to have methodology for identifying the work. Then, of course, you need to create a notification. That is the trigger for any CMMS system. After the notification, of course, you need to have a work order created. Then your prioritization system, you ask yourself, is this work emergency? And if the answer is yes, then you jump through the hoops and kill it, execute it. There is no planning, there is no scheduling. If it is emergency, you execute, you stop the bleeding, you stop the hemorrhage, you stop the emergency immediately. Now, if the answer is no, it's not emergency, then you ask yourself, is it urgent? If it is urgent, you do planning and scheduling, but you give it priority. Okay, so the only way where you don't do planning and scheduling is if it is emergency. If it is not emergency, then you still do planning and scheduling, but you give it priority if it is urgent. If it is not urgent, if it is normal, hopefully most of our work will be normal, then we have time to look at so many other things, right? So again, if it is emergency, you jump through the hoops and execute. If it is not emergency, then it's either urgent or normal. You still need to plan, then schedule, then execute, then trend and close, i.e. you upload the history in the CMMS and close the work order. Don't have a practice of leaving work orders left open. And of course, then you have key performance indicators. Will be good to enable you to see what is good that you can reflect on and redo, or what is bad that you can avoid for the next time around. So our basic work management process has to start with work identification, then prioritization, then planning, then scheduling, and then execution. Avoid a situation where you jump from work identification to execution. Avoid this shortcut. Avoid this shortcut. Only in emergency you do this. Hopefully emergency is less than 5% of our work. Only in emergency you do this. But for all other priorities, i.e. urgent or normal, you must go through the right sequence. And after you execute, you close your feedback and document, and do the status control and KPI to see what is good to go back on and what is not good to avoid for the next cycle, for the next time around. This helps you do the right job, the right way, at the right time, under the right conditions. Why do we want to avoid this shortcut? Many studies have shown, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I'm told now ladies, so we can say one word. Many studies have shown that doing it this way costs the organization at least 3 times more expensive. 3 times more expensive to do the work without this. So obviously there is a lot of unnecessary expenditure that we want to avoid. Also, the chance of getting injured with this shortcut is much more to the organization. It also cause safety difficulties and problems and injuries to our people. So also that is something we want to avoid. So always have a culture in your organization that insists on following the right sequence: work identification, prioritization, planning, scheduling, then execution. In fact, this process has been known to deliver good results, excellent results, not just for maintenance work, but for any other process, because it is based on the known successful methodology of PDCA. For those of you who are not familiar with that, PDCA stands for plan, do, check, and act, take corrective actions. The P part of this process with regards to maintenance is all the way from here to here. We are planning. We've not done any execution. All of this is P. Then the D, doing part, is here. The checking and analyzing and taking corrective action part is here. So following this process is guaranteed to give us excellent results. Now let's talk about the heart of this process, and that is the planning and the scheduling. Planning of maintenance work that has been identified and prioritized is the second step in the work management process. Planning relates to the method and order in which activities are to be carried out, and it determines the logical sequence and relationships between all the activities. Gentlemen, to avoid confusion, planning is about what is to be done and how it is going to be done. There is always some difficulties in distinguishing between what is planning, what is scheduling, and I'll try to clarify this now. Planning is about what is to be done and how is it to be done. Scheduling is about is about timing. Scheduling is about timing. When is it to be done and who is going to be it? So with the planning, there are 2 questions that need to be answered, and that is what and how, what is to be done and how it is to be done. And with the scheduling, 2 questions, that is when and who. When is it to be done and who is actually going to do it? So this helps you to at least debug, avoid this confusion between planning and scheduling. So if maintenance work is planned properly, resources can be scheduled in advance. A well-planned job leaves first-line supervisors with more time to follow up on other important issues. Be aware though, a planner is not an expediter and a planner is not a coordinator for doing the work. The planner has to prepare the plan. Once his plan is ready, he hands it over to the execution team. He should not be engaged in the actual execution. So the elements of the planning process, either as new work requests coming from the field or a PM notification. The person responsible for the planning function, i.e. the planner, opens and approves work orders, notifications, work order in the CMMS. You know, he is a very important user of the CMMS. And this is the starting point of the job planning process. Needs to have a work order. From the notification, he needs to convert it into a work order. Defining the complexity of the work, the planner must review the work requests, PM notification, and determine the complexity of the job to select the proper planning approach about the job type and the extent job scoping is required. Job scoping, is there an identical work order that has been done in the past that I need to check in the system? Do I need to go and visit the site? Always recommended to go and visit the site for the planner to be able to then have an affirmative plan. If the job has been done before, then maybe it's a question of making modifications to the task list, or creation. If the job has not been done before, then you need to create a task list, compile the activity description list and operation activity durations. Durations is very important. Compile material and component lists and manage all non-stock material and external services. How do I manage? You manage it through the warehouse. You communicate with the warehouse and get them to do their work. The planner should not be responsible for expediting parts and parcels. He orders them, and then it is somebody else's responsibility to make sure they are available. Determine resource requirement by creating and maintaining of purchase requisitions. Planning, scoping information, timing and availability of support. There is just a checklist that the planner needs to go through to make sure that he has incorporated all of these things as part of his plan. Do we need special tools? Do we have to have temporary equipment? Do we have to have non-job activity, time and craft support, shutdown requirements? So there are a lot of things that the planner needs to consider into making his plans. And of course, safety analysis, contingency plans, he needs to take sure to make sure that all of these things are taken care of. Be aware, a plan is not a schedule. The definition of work plan is that the compilation of the specific actions required to accomplish a specific work activity. The plan answers the two questions: what is to be done and how it is to be done. So what is the definition of a schedule? The definition of a schedule is that a schedule is a group of planned activities. So you first has to plan before you put them in the schedule, whether they are corrective, preventive, or projects that are allocated to a specific time period for the purpose of sequencing, timing, and execution. Okay, so as I said earlier, the plan, the work plan answers what is to be done and how it is to be done, and the schedule answers when is it going to be done and who is actually going to do the work. Let's talk about 3 rules of planning. First rule of planning, in order to get best result from your planners: let the plan fit the job. Don't over plan something for a small job. So if the job is big, you need to have big plan. If the job is small, you need to have small plan. Don't camouflage the situation to show you are busy and very clever and make things up unnecessarily. So rule number 1 of planning, let the plan fit the job. Don't make a mountain of a molehill. There is a saying, I think in all cultures this is. Consider the skill of the craft in planning work activities. Work order requesting the adjustment of a packing on a valve does not call for detailed planning. If the work order for a broken pump shaft, of course, then levels of planning increases. So all activities don't call for the same level of planning, but all require some thoughts. Second rule of planning, don't let the planner become an expediter. But why? Why? Because if the planner is engaged in expediting, i.e. following up on all the spare parts, where they are, which state they are in, have they been shipped, did they leave the supplier site, where is their trailer that is bringing them, have they arrived to site, have they given access? If he gets engaged with that, he will not have time to do good planning. So avoid a situation where your planner is an expediter. Let your planner focus on making sure that your plans are excellent. So proper planning and scheduling process extends the planning horizon to allow parts and materials handled in a timely manner by the warehouse people. Plenty of time to obtain the parts. Enroll the buyers and warehouse in the endeavor. Don't place a work order on the T-2 schedule. I will explain what is meant by T-2 when we talk about scheduling in the next few slides, until the required parts are available. This means don't put it on the schedule if the parts are not available. Remove it from the schedule. Third rule of planning. If you need support, Mr. Planner, you would best identify it and make sure it's available. Avoid surprises to the execution team. If you need support, you must identify it and make sure it is available. Because not all work activities can be accomplished by one person. If you need information from engineering or from supplier or from operation or from maintenance, go and get it. You know, don't shy away from taking the advice of people who know, and then create a surprise for the execution team. Surprises cost the company a lot of money. Avoid them. The support includes specialty contractors, heavy material, maybe lifting equipment, scaffolding, operators. Planner has to identify all of these things and communicate specific support requirements ahead of time. And then the planner orchestrates all the activities in harmony prior to the execution phase. During execution, he is not there, but prior to execution, he needs to make sure that these things are orchestrated properly. And here is a checklist that the planner needs to have in order to make sure that he has covered everything. And as you can see, the checklist is quite full. You know, estimates, detailed instructions, other documents if needed, like drawings, equipment manuals, parts or special material, location, availability, safety, post-maintenance testing, specific requirements like staging, cleaning, lookouts, contractors. He needs to have this as a good checklist to look to make sure that his plan is full. Avoid surprises to the execution team. That's his goal. So what are the best practices of a maintenance planner? First and foremost, important best practice is to be able to look into the future. A planner has to be a visionary, someone who has to think about the future. Also realize that a plan is not a schedule. Let the plan fit the job. Don't let yourself become an expediter. If you need support, identify it and make sure it's available. Don't plan everything. What is the meaning of that? You don't need, for example, to tell the craft that, oh, by the way, you need a spanner that is size 12 millimeter or this and that. You know, you have a craft people that are skilled. You cannot teach them how to do their job. And last but not least, best practice of a maintenance planner is to attend to long lead time items. Long lead time items. You need to think about them well in advance. Don't have a situation, for example, where you have to do, let's say, for example, air conditioning equipment maintenance and overhauls during the summer because you forgot to do things in the winter. You know, in the summer, you need the cooling equipment at their best, so you cannot avoid to take them down for maintenance or for overhaul. You should do this prior to the summer. Check work orders for the following. Correct location and equipment numbers are present. Clear description and understanding of the problem. Make sure of the following. Proper scope of work. What is to be done? Visit the location, highly recommended for the planners. Start and finish points. Priority is correct based on visit. Is it emergency, urgent, or planned? Based on a system. You have to have a system and confirmed by a visit. Timing. Can the job be done at any time? In most cases, no. You know, there are other issues that are affecting production, so you have to you know, take this in consideration. Must the job be executed during a contingency shutdown, a scheduled shutdown, a major or total factory shutdown? You need to document these changes if these things are appropriate. Who must execute the work? Best is to start with your internal crafts people. Least cost to you. Avoid spending money beyond your fence as much as possible. Maybe your maintenance workshops can do things in-house. If not, then you have to consider outside service provider. So what is needed to perform the work? Identify the parts, make sure they will be available, create a task list. If there is an existing task list for a job, use it and maybe upgrade it. Visit site if needed and make a visual assessment, determine the scope of work, determine what is required. Things to consider for work execution: permits, scaffolding, insulation removal, mobile crane, and size. Do we have to have electrical isolation, cleanup by operations? Who else must be involved? Special tools or equipment? So a lot of things that the planner need to think about well in advance. Then you break the job into smaller activities, if applicable. Determine type and the quantity of resources required. Estimate the duration of each activity. Communicate with other departments in a multidisciplinary job. Completion dates on work orders must be negotiated and agreed upon. Once all of this is done, then you place on schedule. Who places on a schedule? We'll be talking about that in a little while. Documentation. Make sure that needed documentation are provided. Again, during execution, you need to have everything readily available for the execution team. Every waiting is wasting money and resources during execution. So avoid any surprises and make sure that the execution team have everything that they need. That's your job, Mr. Planner. Well in advance, you need to think about this. This is just examples of the possible documentation that will be needed on certain jobs, like pipe repair approval form, vessel repair approval forms, and so on. I'm not going to go through all of these, but make sure that all the documentation that are needed are available well in advance. Ensure your work plan is correct. Review the appropriate with the appropriate supervisor to ensure duration, craft type, approach, parts. Does it make sense? Revise if appropriate. Main thing is to avoid surprises for the execution team. I cannot overemphasize this. The quality, in my judgment, of a planner is the one who has least amount of surprises for the execution team. Planners' ability and performance measures and pay rises should be based on this. No surprise, best performance. Many surprises for execution team, not a very good performer in terms of planning. Now, revise scope and task list if appropriate, but more importantly, during the work execution, ideally, the planner should not be there. But if the thing is that the supervisor in an absolute despair for help, okay, you provide him with the help, but don't do the supervisor job and don't make it a habit. You know, you maybe assist in acquiring additional parts if the situation is so bad that they need your help, but don't make it a habit. Ideally, you should avoid the engagement of the planner during execution. That is the ideal implementation of a good work management process. You did the planning before. Once the planning is done and the work is placed on schedule, the planner should not be engaged with the execution. That's the ideal situation. Once the job is completed, then solicit improvements. If in the task list, file where it can be reviewed, ask questions as appropriate, look for PM enhancements, make sure to update your records in the CMMS, ensure that the execution team have updated the CMMS with their findings immediately after execution. Now we are talking about looking ahead scheduling process. So we've done the planning, now we talk about the scheduling. It happens in here. This is referring to our earlier work management process, and it happens in here, ahead of the time. Look ahead scheduling process is ahead of the time. It's not here, it's here. Look ahead scheduling. Let's talk about that a little bit. This is where the look ahead scheduling process takes place. Look ahead meaning it is well in advance of the execution. Scheduled work that has been planned and appears on the station's weekly or daily work schedule. Definition of schedule is a group of planned activities, whether they are corrective, preventive, or projects that are allocated to specific time periods for the purpose of sequencing, timing, and execution. Break-in work is work that is not in the schedule and it interrupts the daily work schedule. So you should, this break-in work is really emergency, and you want to minimize that because, as I said earlier, emergency work costs the organization 3 times more expensive than planned work. So avoid it as much as possible. Why do we want to schedule work in advance? It helps us to coordinate activities between departments. It makes sure that parts and support are available. Concurrent activity is easier to manage. Coordinate resource availability, reduce wait time, and complete more work per unit of time. That is another definition of efficiency, doing more for less. Complete more work per unit of time. So set scheduling horizon further out, look ahead, scheduling, set the horizon. 6 weeks. 6 weeks will be an ideal situation to have your scheduling process done over a 6 weeks period. I will explain a little bit more about it here. 6 weeks schedule helps identify priorities. Longer horizon lessens reactive tendency. Reactive tendency is emergency or break-in activities that we want to avoid. So a little bit of talk about backlog. What is backlog? Backlog basically defined as planned work that has yet to be scheduled. We know that we got this work to be done, but we cannot put it on schedule for many reasons. Maybe we don't have enough resources, or maybe we will not be able to gain access to the operating assets. So we keep it somewhere. What is that somewhere? That is called backlog. you always need to have an estimation of your available resources. That is estimated man hours available to be scheduled minus known break-in hours. Meaning what? You allow reservoir, maybe let's say 20% of the available resources to cater for emergency. So we don't upset our schedule if we have little emergency. The process starts, now we're talking about cooperative work scheduling process. What is meaning cooperative look ahead scheduling process? Cooperative, first of all, mean it is done by a team. So we're not talking about the scheduling done by one person sitting in an office, produce a schedule and send it to expect people to follow. That doesn't work. Collaborative scheduling process engages a whole team. Who is the team? Planner, the maintenance supervisors, that is mechanical supervisor, electrical maintenance supervisor, instrument maintenance supervisor, also somebody from production, maybe a production day supervisor. These 5 people form the collaborative scheduling process. So we need to look at all open work associated with one area of the plant. Look at one area of the plant at a time. Look at the backlog and take what is needed. All associated with preventive maintenance, all non-regulatory work, teams finding during the walk down by the team. Maintenance, who is the team? As we said earlier, maintenance representatives, 3 supervisors, mechanical, electrical, instrument, planner, and production representative. Good to have the supervisor of the production involved in the team. So the process starts 6 weeks prior to execution. 6 weeks prior to execution. We call it T-6. T-6. 6 weeks prior to execution, ideally, the scheduling process should start. Meaning what? Meaning we need to know about what work that needs to be done well in advance. So at the T-6 weekly scheduling meeting, the planner chairs that meeting and he reviews the list with the input from the team. The group agrees on the list, and list is adjusted for constraint, resource, or operational. Once the work list is agreed upon by the team, then given to the planner for planning. This is the preliminary work list for scheduling. Planner has now 3 to 4 weeks to do his plans and identify and secure parts, materials, permits, production assistance, and prepares the plan. Then 2 weeks prior to execution, T-2, the same team meets again to review. Now they have the advantage of the feedback from the planner. So the planner comes to the meeting and he says, these parts are not available or will not be able to do this or that. So basically they are now refining the list that they first agreed upon at T-6. They now refine it to to adjust in accordance with the resources, operational. If there are no parts, no point in keeping it on the schedule at T-2. Remove it. So the idea here is to refine the original list at two weeks prior to execution. Again, the whole team, that is planner, maintenance supervisors, 3 of them, and the operation representative. The 3 of them agree on this list of scheduled work at T-2. At the end of that meeting, the planner tells the team, guys, we need to next week have another meeting at T-1 to freeze the schedule. So if there are any changes, you have between now and next week to think about. Later, no changes, finished. Then they meet one more time at T-1, 1 week before execution, and the team reviews the list for the last time. The group agrees on the list, Again, if there are minor adjustments, they are done then, before the list is frozen and committed. People sign to accept that is the list, that is the work that we will do, and then it is distributed. This is the final list of work for the next week for execution team to achieve at T-0. At that juncture, at T-1, the planner says bye-bye to the team and leave the team to do the execution without his presence there. He has done his job. Thank you very much, Mr. Planner. Now the execution team takes it from there onward. So this is where we are. Identify the work, walk down part of the preparation at T-7, T-6, they meet to agree on the list. From T-5 to T-3, the planner does his job. At T-2, they almost finalize before they freeze at T-1. At T-0, they execute without the planner here. Planner finishes at this point. Planner is not involved in the execution as much as possible. He is not involved in execution. So the success or failure of scheduling effort depends greatly on teamwork, communication, and discipline. Discipline is a very, very, very important element in the process. Great scheduling practices: conduct weekly scheduling meetings where all participating parties can provide input to the schedule. Widely distribute work schedules to operations, maintenance, and any other participating departments. There's no secrets here. Once the schedule is frozen, distribute it everywhere. High schedule compliance is the goal. Our goal as an organization to achieve high schedule compliance. All parties should be working together to eliminate and reduce or mitigate the effect of break-in work. We don't want to break our schedule. We want to do what is in the schedule. And we have a brief meeting daily, that is the execution team with the supervisor, to make sure that they achieve their schedule. Benefits of scheduling: coordination of activities between maintenance and production. Schedule changes can be communicated and accommodated in a timely and non-disruptive fashion. Optimization of resources and capabilities. Parts and support available prior to work commencement. Plan better use of resources based on availability. Parts and support available prior to work commencement, combining many tasks to occur at the same time. And as we said earlier, completing more work per unit of time, i.e. being more efficient. Boundary conditions. The following are required for each business. Weekly look-ahead schedule will be utilized. Ideally, our long-term aim is to have 100% of all available resources are scheduled. That is our long-term goal. Will take quite some time to get there, maybe a year or 2 years, but it has to remain our eventual goal. Available resources are defined by each plant. A process for schedule break-in authorization to be defined for each plant. Only jobs where planning is complete should be scheduled. Maintenance and operations will have input into the schedule. Scheduling process and the decision making regarding scheduling will be clearly defined and understood by all participants. Schedule will be communicated to all people affected. Backlog will be reviewed on a plan-defined periodic basis. Review performance at the next weekly scheduling meeting and make the process a high priority. High priority meaning that even the CEO wants to make sure that we achieve high schedule compliance. So what is all this supposed to accomplish on a day-to-day basis? With successful implementation of work management process and proper planning and scheduling, organization can expect to see production volume increases. Production volume increases, meaning more money for the organization. Reduction in operating expenses, increased manpower utilization, reduction in emergency and urgent work, time between failure increase, i.e. more predictability, safety and regulatory compliance improvement, proactive work culture, better teamwork and employee ownership and engagement, more effective meetings, and more efficient utilization of resources. All good stuff for organization. Now transforming manufacturing, and that brings us to the end of the webinar. I think we have a few minutes for questions and answer. So if there are any questions and answers, go ahead, Deepak.
Sir, we have 15 minutes. We have 15 minutes for Q&A.